Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's launch event for Adra, the AI Data and Robotics Association. I'm Rich Walker. I'm one of the board directors at Adra and the chair. This is Pirate. He's a good cat and he's come to help me with the presentation today. We have a packed schedule, some very interesting talks from some luminaries in the AI data and robotics community and in the European community, and we're really hoping to give you a good understanding of what Adra is about, what it's for, what it will do, and how you can get involved and engaged in that. As part of that getting involved and engaged, we have a Slido running. If you go to slido.com and type in 097095, you'll be able to send questions to our panels, to our speakers and to myself, and we'll hopefully get to those during the course of the meeting. So the agenda today, we've got some opening introductions from Lucille Scioli from the Commission and from the Adra President Marina Bill. We're then going to have a practical presentation on how Adra will work and how you can engage with it. We'll introduce you to 3 of the 5 founding members. We'll then have some keynote speeches from senior figures around how Adra fits into the wider ecosystem and why it's important, introduce you to 2 more of our founding members, and then we'll have a panel discussion from industry about how this fits into the context of European AI, data and robotics, and how we can engage and how we can do things and why this is exciting for business. So again, the slido.com is 097095. Please do put your questions in there. We're just having the usual small connection challenges with our speakers, so we'll get them up in a couple of seconds. But firstly, this is the launch event for the AI, Data and Robotics event association, and we will be taking your questions during the session. So I'm just waiting on the queue that our first speaker is available to do our opening. Okay, so we'll go over now to Lucilla Scioli from the European Commission, who will explain to us a little bit about where Adra fits into the landscape around artificial intelligence and the digital industry there. Lucilla, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to open this event, which is a very important event for us because, as you all know, we are here to open basically and launch a new partnership which is extremely important in areas that are very, very relevant for the European policies. And in fact, the European Commission published a digital decade strategy not long ago, where we set some ambitious objectives. And one of these objectives is about our capability of digitizing industry and public sector by 2030. And in particular, we aim at having at least 75% of European enterprises take up cloud computing services, big data, and artificial intelligence. So data, artificial intelligence, robotics for us are really at the core of the digital transformation in Europe. We have seen this during the pandemic, where the digital transition has accelerated and also the use of these technologies has accelerated. And I think that these 3 particular technologies, let me call them technologies, will very much dictate the pace of digitalization in the future. And this is why, while we have been preparing for the future, we have also in the European Union tried to put some safeguards to our capabilities to use the technology, as well as to facilitate the use of the technologies themselves. So we have accompanied our policies with a number of pieces of legislation that are relevant to data, AI, and robotics. Let me remind of the draft, or let's say proposed Artificial Intelligence Act, of the Data Governance Act and the Data Act. And once this legislation is adopted, it will really support the kind of digital transition that is human-centric, that stimulates governments, stimulates better working environment, and stimulates better access and resharing and sharing and reusing of data. So the proposed Data Governance Act, for example, is going to create these new, let's say, profiles of intermediaries of brokers for data and facilitate the safe reuse of sensitive public sector data, like healthcare data, for example, as well as creating a framework for data altruism, which allows also data sharing of non-commercial data for the benefit of society. And then in preparation, we have the Data Act, which will ensure a fair allocation of data value among actors that are involved in the data economy. And it will clarify who can have access to and use what data. Last but not least, of course, the Artificial Intelligence Act is necessary to bring trust in the field of artificial intelligence, because we want more businesses and more citizens to use artificial intelligence, and therefore it's important that they can minimize the risk that some of the artificial intelligence applications can bring. Of course, we have been introducing rules. I've been presenting these rules before to this audience, and I will not repeat them. But we have tried to create a system which is risk-based, so rules that only apply to those artificial intelligence applications that are likely to bring harm simply in terms of violation of fundamental rights and violation of safety, and at the same time propose a proportionate framework so that we are able to address only a limited list of use cases of what we consider to be high risk applications, so that we can safely say that most of the artificial intelligence market is not subject to rules at all. But still, we think that the fact that the European artificial intelligence market will be considered trustworthy and more human-centric will also be an important stimulus to the use and the acquisition of artificial intelligence that is made in Europe. Now, as you know, the regulatory framework on AI was proposed in April last year, and with the regulatory framework, we have also proposed a coordinated plan on artificial intelligence, which has been developed together with the member states. And this plan is important because it identifies a number of key action areas where partnerships are particularly beneficial and important. And that's why we have to work together with the member states and with the stakeholders to be able to exploit the synergies and increase the impact of our action. And the coordinated plan, of course, makes proposals for further actions in the context of AI, including, for example, its infrastructure. And so it includes actions in support of the cloud, in support of the data spaces, in support of computing infrastructures, such as the use of supercomputers or the development of chips, in particular for artificial intelligence. And I would like to highlight the fact that the coordinated plan also refers to the Digital Europe program and the actions that we have on AI in the Digital Europe program, including something that for me is very important, which is the setup of new organizations that are called testing and experimentation facilities, which will help us to bring innovation from the research, whether it's foundational research, whether it's industrial research, faster to the market. And this is going to be really important, I think, for all of you to be able to exploit in the future, to be able to test and experiment innovations before they're actually brought to the market. The coordinated plan also focuses on some areas that consider to be strategic from the point of view of artificial intelligence, and that of course includes robotics, but also mobility, but also all those actions that can help us achieving the Green Deal and a better healthcare. And of course, data, AI, and robotics are very relevant to all these strategic areas. And one of the main instruments that the coordinated plan addresses is actually European partnerships. And so we are at the core of what we are discussing today. And the partnerships are essential to define roadmaps, to engage the stakeholders, to bring excellence and to stimulate a wider diffusion of these technologies in the European Union. So we, as a Commission, have really big expectations for the partnership on AI, data, and robotics. It's a new partnership, and like everything new, it comes with its complexities and its challenges. We want to be able to see stakeholders that break out of the technology silos and work together. We think this is the right way to go ahead. And joint efforts are really needed to also attract new stakeholders and bring all the actors together and create a critical mass that we need in these areas to achieve our strategic objectives. So I really count on this particular partnership to achieve this maximization of synergies, this blending of capabilities, and these increases of attractiveness for new participants and new members. And the commitment of the European Union in the field is significant. You may have seen that with the Recovery and Resilience Fund, we will be increasing our allocation of resources in the European Union to digital. We ask that 20% of the Recovery and Resilience Fund is allocated to digital, and we hope that some of those resources will also go to data, artificial intelligence, and robotics. And on top of that, Horizon Europe will provide 1.3 billion euros to these areas, which will be matched by a similar amount by its private members. And then we hope also, of course, to leverage impact elsewhere in the economy. The Digital Europe program will bring about 2 billion euros to AI, data, and cloud areas, deployment and operation, as well as to advance digital skills, including in AI and robotics. And the partnership will be able to benefit for much of this investment. We, as you know, plan as the European Union to actually invest a total of 1 billion euro every year in fields that are related to these three technologies. But the partnership, to conclude, will be as strong as its members. So it will be allowed and it will be capable of leveraging this funding only if we will see that there are new members joining, whether there are SMEs joining, whether there are startups, where it will be able to reach out to civil society. And it will be very important to mobilize and involve um, the whole value chain and the whole supply chain. And it will also be important to connect to new organizations that will be set up also again in the context of the Digital Europe program, like the digital innovation hubs, exactly to be able to reach out to the small and medium enterprises. And we will do our best also to make the partnership connect to the member states and talk to the member states so that we will have a much deeper political discussion in what the partnership can do beyond industrial research in terms of skills and in terms of all the other policies that need to support the development and the use of these technologies. So I wish all of you involved in this partnership all the best.
I think we've lost Lucille there, so apologies for that.
Spirit that you have, and I, really wish you a fruitful event and fruitful work in the months to come. Thank you very much.
There. So I think we're going back to, yes, thank you. So some very important points there, I think, about coming together as industry and as the academic research community and working together in a partnership to build out this model with the Commission where we can help guide and steer and deliver and deploy and leverage the Commission's investment to really transform the landscape around AI, data and robotics across Europe. And it's a big program, it's a big ask for us, and we're very pleased that you're also interested in being on board. So within the Adra organization, we've been pulling together a great team, and we're very, very lucky to have as our president, Marina Bill, who's the Vice President Marketing for ABB Robotics. Marina's experience spans the whole area of AI data and robotics, and she brings a fantastic focus to our organization, a real kind of commercial drive. So Marina, perhaps you could say a few words to just say how you see the kind of the economic landscape around robotics and AI and data.
Thank you very much, and a very welcome to everybody. And first, a big thank you to Lucilla and for your support to our organization, and from the whole commission, your support to our new associations. So, as we said, my name is Marina Bill. I am the new president of Adra, and it's really an honor for me to have this event today. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of you, not only in this event, but also hopefully now in the weeks, months, and years to come. So if we go to my first slide, and we can change to the first slide. So again, very, very welcome, and please don't hesitate to put in questions to make this as interactive as we can in this time. Before I go into a little bit more about what Adra is all about and what we're doing, I thought we'll have a little look backwards and go backwards in history. So if we look upon where we are now, and especially from a technology part here, if we look all around what has happened in the course of science and technology, and just look around everything around you. If you look upon your clock, the steam engine, vaccination, electricity, telegraphs, radios, antibiotics, information technology, mobile phones, satellites, and what we are going to talk to today a lot is artificial intelligence. Firstly came into the market around in the end of the 50s. Robotics, first robots was delivered in the beginning of the 70s, and the big data concepts coming out and being discussed in the early 90s in the beginning. We can see that all of this has contributed to where we see the history time is bending. And normally we'll refer to that as the industrial revolution part, where all these innovations come up, and we are now really in the fourth industrial revolution. But maybe it would be better to actually call this more a technology-driven social revolution, because science has been driving this technology development, and it has really transformed the societies completely. And it has allowed all of us today to stay healthier, to live much longer, to work in a better and a safer way. So technology has really formed the society. So except that we are living in very exciting times with new innovations coming out, it is also, I think we should never forget and underestimate what kind of effect this has on our life and the whole society around us. Now, if we then leave the big picture and goes into a little bit more of where we're standing today, and I will, of course, focus then our three main areas and see from a European perspective what's happening there. So if we go to the next slide, and we look a bit about a review from Center of Data Innovation. And it looks into if anybody has published a journal or an article or had a patent of anything AI related in 10 years' time. And we can see there that Europe comes up very high, which is positive and good. But if we look upon the other part, the share of AI startups, then the figures looks very different. So that is one data point to keep in mind. If we then go to the next slide and we look upon the market trends a little bit for how many robots are installed, and if we only go back a few years to 2019, we see a growth. If we would show the picture going back 10 years, there would be a double-digit growth of installations of robots all around the world. But this is based on an IFR study. If we look upon what's happening 19 to 20 and also their estimates of how the robot installations around the world will continue to grow, we can see that it will be a continued growth. But if we look upon the European part, the growth is more flattish. So we don't talk about a growth here. So it's estimated that much more robot, more automatization will be made around the world, but maybe a little bit less in Europe, estimates. Then let us continue and look a little bit just purely on revenues from data companies, and looking here about the 27 EU states plus UK and comparing it to US. There's a gap from 2013, but what we can see in the last year that actually the gap here when it comes to just purely revenues in these companies are actually widening. And then as a last and fourth data point to bring up here, is looking about the overall picture of and also here this is based from various articles and reports and also a lot of governmental statistics, and just compare the area of Europe with US and China. And also here we can see the AI development and alike, that we are not really always, or Europe is not really on par on this. So conclusion is we live in a very exciting times. We know the impact of technology in society. And we see also that there is a possibility for Europe to become even stronger in this area. So with that, we will move into Adra. So what is then Adra? Well, the AI Data and Robotics Partnership, it was formed this year. We signed the MOU earlier this summer, and the public side is, of course, European Commission, where Adra is representing the private side. And each of the side is estimated now to have up to 1.3 billion euros of public investment, and then the same amount on private spendings between the area from now to 2030. So a big and very ambitious program in that part. And we will discuss Adra in detail and especially how you can become a member. But let's look now first really on the general objectives of the partnership. And it is built on 3 pillars to really secure Europe's technologies and know-how in this area, to establish leadership in the area, and to reinforce a strong and global competitive position in this. These are the 3 fundamentals that we are basing the Adra cooperation and work on. And if you then go to the next slide, and you will see much more of this coming into the next presentation. Adra today is a joint initiative by 5 associations: the Big Data Value Association, then the 3 AI associations with Claire, EuroAI, and Ellis, and finally the EU Robotics. So these 5 associations have this as a joint initiative, and with that we have formed Adra. And this is really set a big step for Adra and a big day for us to launch this now. And we are, as I mentioned at the beginning, really looking forward now to hear from all of you, get your input, and also hopefully being able to introduce you as members to this really new and excited and very much needed association. So with that, I'll hand back to you, Rish.
Marina. Thank you very much, Marina. That's a really useful overview of the kind of economic importance and the underlying trends there, and where Europe is perhaps lagging behind some of our competing geopolitical areas and how we can do better. And this, I think, is something to motivate all of us. We're now going to give you a sort of practical introduction to Adra, how we can engage, what we can do, and how to take part in that. So I think first we've got a short video just to get us up to speed with what Adra's up to and what Adra's doing. And can we cue the video up now?
European AI, data and robotics are at the core of developing modern society in all of its facets. They will create new opportunities and be a principal driver of innovation, productivity and economic growth. At the same time, they will help us to solve some of the greatest challenges we face in the sectors of health, energy, transportation, manufacturing, agriculture, and in protecting our environment.
Fundamental research, technological innovation, social acceptance, and regulation are all interconnected. They feed on each other to evolve and function. This is why a broad coalition is needed. The AI, Data and Robotics Partnership in Horizon Europe was built to bring together policymakers, academics and industries.
Adra is the AI, Data and Robotics Association. It was created by 5 renowned European associations that are all committed to join forces and bring about the best that Europe has to offer in AI, data and robotics. Adra is a membership association that you can join. Adra represents the private side of the AI, Data and Robotics Partnership that has been signed with the European Commission for the period 2021 to 2027. The partnership mobilises 1.3 billion euros of public investment through the Horizon Europe programme and up to 1.3 billion euros of private investment.
Why does it matter? Adra and the partnership pursue a common and shared vision to secure Europe's sovereignty over AI, data and robotics technologies and know-how, to establish European leadership in AI, data and robotics technologies with high socio-economic impact, and to reinforce a strong and global competitive position for Europe in AI, data and robotics. Your support and involvement within the partnership will help shape and deliver Europe's vision for a human-centric and trustworthy use of AI, data and robotics based on fundamental European rights, principles and values.
Join Adra today to be at the centre of the dialogue on European AI, data and robotics, and contribute to shaping the decision process and the future of these technologies.
Thank you. And I think I can say for all of us that I look forward to those days of getting back to flying into airports and sitting all day in meeting rooms there, actually meeting up with people face to face and really engaging with the key issues, post-it notes, whiteboards. Such a shame we haven't been able to do that for the last 2 years. Let's get back on there. So we're now going to tell you a little bit more about Adra. We have one of our vice presidents, Renaud Champion, to explain the key elements of how to join, and then we're going to get 3 of our vice presidents, Renaud, Morten Ergens and Thomas Hahn, to talk to us about the practicalities of the organization that they represent and how to engage with that. So Renaud, over to you now.
Thank you, Rich. Hello, everyone. I'm Renaud Champion. I'm one of the directors and vice president of Adra. I'm very happy to be with you today for this launch event. It's a big moment because as you've seen in the video, so far Adra has been constituted from 5 associations. Adra is not an association of associations. Adra is an association of members, and we are very looking forward in joining forces from the industry community, from the research community, and the NGO communities to shape the future of what AI, data, and robotics should be in Europe. So I will go very briefly about how to become a member, because it's all about you guys joining the association. So far,
Renaud, apologies. We have very poor sound quality. I'm not sure whether it's the microphone you're using.
Okay. Let's try something different.
Sorry about that. We're using an absolutely fantastic video conferencing system that presents things really, really well, but that means that one of us has to actually come up to interrupt, which is always unusual. We can't just shout over each other like we normally do. So, is that?
Can you hear better now?
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic, Renaud. Thank you very much.
Okay,
I'll give the floor back to you. No worries. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Sorry for this technical issue. So yes, Adra is all about the members. It's all about you. So far, the 5 associations, the 5 funding associations, BDVA, EU Robotics, Ellis Claire, and AI, have been working in setting up the first steps of Adra. We introduced the statutes, we registered the association, we finalized the internal regulations, and we also designed the first research and innovation development agenda. But we are now at a stage where we need you to join us, coming from the AI community, coming from the data community, and coming from the robotics community, to really develop the association one step further. And that's all about you guys joining and you guys becoming members in order to once again shape the future of the free technologies with us. So if we launch, thank you. So Adra is started. Adra is open to members. And what are members? So the definition of members is very much straightforward, as we see in the next slide. Members are coming from 2 different kinds. You have the voting members and the non-voting members. Voting members can be industry members, large corporations, SMEs, intermediate corporations. It can be research members, research and technology institutes, organizations, but also higher education establishments like university, college, or labs and research groups within universities. But also we have a third kind of voting right members, which are the strategic members like EU Robotics, BDVA, RAI, ELIS, CLARE, for instance, but any association that could be considered as strategic for us, for Adra, and for the partnership. So those three categories, which are very classic categories and traditional categories, will bear voting rights. And by voting right, we mean having a voice within the association at the General Assembly. But we, of course, also welcome members which have no voting right, but can still participate in the activities of the associations. And those are associate members, like trade unions, non-governmental organizations, and so on, clusters. And those kind of members, once again, will take part of the activities, will be able to join topic groups, will be able to contribute to the future of the free technologies, but will not have, so to speak, the voting rights at the General Assembly. So this is a brief description of who can be eligible to become a member. And now, if we move to the next slide to show you the process and more practically the fee structure to become a member, you will have two main things to understand. First one is you have categories. So the categories that you see on the left side are the ones I just mentioned. So you have the industry members, large enterprises, mid-caps, SMEs. So they are classified according to the number of employees. So people who want to join will definitely look into what categories they fall under. And then you have the academic potential members, research and academic organizations with more than 50 employees, but also small research entities below 50 employees, below 50 researchers. We have the strategic members, as mentioned, and we have the others, the last one, which are the non-voting NGOs or trade unions that we mentioned previously. But you also have another category that we call the startup. The startup is for industry members joining, which have less than 3 years of existence, and they are eligible to a reduced fee so that they can join. And we understand that we need you, we need your expertise, we need your energy to join Adra, and that's why up to 3 years you will be able to join with a smaller contribution to the association. So that's the different categories on which you can identify. And then you have the level of fee, the full annual fee that we will ask depending on your categories. That's the second column. And the third column is something that is very important for us. It's a discount that is available for members of members, meaning if you are already a member of one of the founding associations, if you are a member of EU Robotics, of CLARE, ELIS, RAI, or BDVA, you are eligible to a discount. And this discount is computed as 50% of the fee you already paid to your association. And this discount is, however, capped at 50% of the full Adra fee. So let's take an example. If you are an SME, member of EU Robotics, and if your fee is already, let's say, 1,000 euro to EU Robotics, you are eligible to 50% of 1,000 euro, which is 500 euro. So your fee to Adra will be 2,000 euro minus 500 euros. So that's a way for us to, bootstrap the whole thing and make sure that members of funding organizations are eligible on a fast track basis and are eligible to join Adra very quickly. So that's the fee structure that we want to propose to make sure that we can engage the most of you, because we need you to join, and we need you to be active very quickly in the association. And the process for joining is shown on the next slide. It's very straightforward. It's just 5 steps. First thing is to download on the association website the application form. It's very easy. You go to the address you see here on the slide. In the menu resources, you can download the application form. You can download the statutes. You will be able also very shortly to download the internal regulations, to review them, to understand what are your rights, how the association is working. Once you've downloaded it, you will be asked to send back this application form to the office, so that the office and the Secretary General can review if there is enough information, if all the consistent information is there on the form. And then the more formal steps are step 4 and 5. The board of directors will review your application, check that you are eligible to a discount, if it's the case, if you are a member of Robotics, BDV, and so on. And then, if everything is fine, the BOD, the board of directors, will grant you a temporary status, membership status. And you will be, once you have this status, you will be able to participate in all the activities of the association. We don't wait for the General Assembly, which is the final formal step that will grant the final full statute of a membership. We don't wait for this General Assembly for you guys to participate in Adra's life. The General Assembly is the formal body that can welcome you in a final step to the association, but you will be already active once you have these temporary statutes. So if you need any more details, of course, you can check on the website what's possible to do. You will have all the resources. You can ask any questions to the Secretary General. And of course, we have this Q&A just after my presentation if you want to address whatever thing you want to address about Adra, about the membership, about why become a member. So I'd be happy to answer with my fellow directors any question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Renaud. It's a really good overview and introduction. So we're now going to bring up Morten Ergens from Claire and Thomas Hahn from BDVA and Siemens to give us a few queries about, to answer a few questions about Adra and the association. So I guess the first question, and this may be a quick one for all of you, is obviously we have these 5 founding associations and we have the Adra entity itself. If I'm coming into this cold from outside, where do I go? Why would I, as a robotics SME or an AI SME, join Adra or join EU Robotics or Claire or BDVA? What are your views? Perhaps Thomas, you could pick this one up first.
I will do my best. Many thanks. I think the important thing is every part of us, AI, data, and robotics, are covering a certain domain aspect. Interesting will it become when you're looking what we can do together. Let's say the intersection is maybe the wrong word, but what is cross topic. I give you an example. When you're speaking about AI Act, Data Act, and so on, this we can solve across AI, data, and robotics jointly together. This is a benefit, independent that you are active in the Euro Robotics or BDVA or in the Claire community. But exactly these cross-cutting topics is what we can address in this joint undertaking. Let's phrase it this way.
Thank you very much for that, Thomas. Now we have a question about what does Adra think about open source, about open source as a means to sovereignty, strengthening the European position in robotics. Morten, you've been involved in a lot of AI research and innovation. What are your views on open source and how that plays into the Adra ecosystem?
Well, it plays into the ecosystem in the same way as it plays into the economy. The Adra ecosystem will, of course, cover anything that is important for Europe to step up where it's leading, maintain lead, where it's behind, move to the front. And the ecosystem is, Europe is not going to move to that forefront if this ecosystem is not growing and encompassing different aspects of putting products and services to the market. Some of them are open source based, some of them may not be, and that's and our job here is to participate and create the important future of Europe. Technology creates our future, and whether this is through open source avenue or closed source, it is in many ways two different approaches, and Europe needs to move along both paths generally. No, the question is whether in participation, in collaborations with other, what does that mean? That is a more complex question, which I cannot fire from the hip here to answer. But what I would say to you is the following. Participate in creating the future. Join Adra in order to become a part or influence the considerable investments we are going to do. Join one of the funding associations together, and you get almost two for the price of one, and help us establishing all the activities that is pushing this forward. Some of those activities will be clearly open source directed. Some of them would be less so.
Thank you very much for that. That's really, really clear overview. And I think, yes, we've all benefited hugely from open source across the technology community over the last 20, 30 years. It'll be great to see how we can kind of double down on that and build that further.
That's right.
Renaud, there's a question here which is about the involvement of the PPP, the public-private partnership, which Adra is one side of, with the Commission and with the funding programs. So people often say, do I have to be a member of the PPP organization? Do I have to be there in order to submit proposals into the funding calls? And you've seen a lot of this in previous PPP. Could you maybe explain the relationship between the funding calls and the private side of the partnership and the members of the private side?
Yes, of course. Clearly, Adra is here to represent the private side, meaning the industry and the academic side of AI data and robotics. And the goal of this private side is to advise the Commission, advise the partnership on what are the technologies that should be developed, what are the enablers, what are the barriers, should they be business barriers, should there be regulation, should it be linked to ethical issues. So the goal of Adra is really to feed the Commission and the calls of the Commission with this substance, with this raw material of what needs to be done to shape, once again, the future of AI and data and robotics in Europe. And that's a way, as Morten was saying, to hopefully influence the Commission, influence our strategy in Europe. Of course, you can apply to a call issued by the European Commission, even if you are not a member of Adra. Of course, it's open. The calls from the commissions are open to any consortium or to any companies or labs, even if they don't join eRobotics, BDVA, RAI, or even Adra. But the fact of joining the association is really about giving you the possibility to express your concern and to act proactively on where the call will be, and then to some extent contribute in promoting your view of where AI, data, and robotics should lead. So joining Adra is not a prerequisite to answer a call, but it's a booster for you, for your organization, for your lab, for your university, to promote what you've been doing and pushing forward your own agenda.
it helps you shape the longer term, and then participating in the calls itself is perhaps more of a shorter term activity. But yes, thank you for that, Renaud. Thomas, we have a question about linking up with other initiatives. Someone's mentioned the Innovative Medicine Initiative. You've been responsible for linking with a really large number of different initiatives and organizations over your career. How do you see Adra fitting into the wider ecosystem of other initiatives, other organizations?
I always like to have this holistic view when you think about what is needed. You have on the one side the topics around storage and calculation. We have, for example, the Euro HPC joint undertaking, its insights. Then you have all about the data infrastructure, for example, Gaia-X is inside, and IDSA and FiWare. Then we have the data space where BDVA and IDSA and the other initiatives are coming inside. Then to get value out of the data, where BDVA is strong inside, with the collaboration with the AI committees, and then you have the application fields, Industry 4.0 or health or something else. So meaning, on the one side, you have to cover, and I also mentioned some of the aspects, we have to look at this holistic view, because at the end, when you want to create impact in the market, you have to cover this. So that's the one topic. Therefore, I'm very active in collaboration, because you asked regarding collaboration. So we set up between BDVA, FiWare, IDSA, and Gaia-X, the so-called Data Space Business Alliance, exactly to have this, data infrastructure, data spaces, get the value out of the data. Somebody names it as the different sides of a coin, which we can do. One issue. Other issue is when you want to scaling up, you have to have a standardization. And that's the reason why we have cooperation with Senelec, for example. Third topic, you have to create impact to the verticals. In BDVA, we have different vertical segments which we're covering, but also strong relation to the vertical initiative. In Europe, you can say Made in Europe, for example, only to catch one out of this in health and agriculture. As a meaning, I think the cooperation between these topics, think about my holistic stack, which I mentioned before, is key to establish a lively ecosystem to create impact in and for Europe.
Thank you very much for that. And yes, we look forward to building out these wider relationships as quickly as practicable on there. And we've already been approached by some of the other partnerships and some of the other organizations to start doing that and building on that. So that's fantastic to see. In the interest of time, I just want to pick up one last question and answer that live, and then the other ones here we'll put into an FAQ on the Adra website. So Morten, you've been involved in startups and SMEs in the past. We have people saying, like, I'm a micro company. How do I get engaged? How do I get involved in this? Could you give us your view on that?
Yes, absolutely. Please, if you're a startup, a micro company, contact us. We'll find a way to bring you in, of course. But let me just say this. Europe's future is not only defined by large companies. It's really, these technologies are defining, they're transformative, they're potentially disruptive, and we need an ecosystem of small companies, startups, entrepreneurial efforts that is feeding on the technology and bringing new things to the market. And we, as an organization, will not focus solely at all on the large locomotives, which are important. We will not succeed in Europe if we are not creating a healthy environment and a growth opportunity for smaller companies and micro companies. We will establish ways for you to participate. So knock on the door, come in, and help us helping yourself in creating this future for Europe. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I would say that for small companies,
there is a big discount. Yes.
Oh, yes,
yeah, sorry.
Big discount.
Yes.
For small companies, being involved in something like Adra is a great way to meet a much wider landscape and a much wider ecosystem. So thank you very much to our VPs for your time there. As I say, we'll pick up the other questions and we'll put them in an FAQ on the website. So thank you everyone for those questions. They're very, very helpful. We're now going to introduce you to 3 of the founding partnerships. So we'll have a short video explaining the Big Data Value Association, and then Claire, and then Ellis. So if we can roll the videos now.
BDVA is an industry-driven research and innovation association. So we are today almost 230 members. The story started back in 2014. This was part of this big data value public and private partnership. We work on different areas, so data and AI technologies, platform, data spaces, as well as skills, standardization, etc. This, when I say members, so it's not only large industries, a lot of SMEs, including startups, also academia, research center, RTO, so all those actors are working together for a number of years now. The community is expanding basically, and this new Adra, this new partnership with data, AI and robotics is an illustration of what's happening.
The expectation from the partnership is to create impact, to create touchable or visible impact. The use of industrial data and responsible and trustworthy industrial AI opens opportunities for Europe, which we have to take quickly and to proceed, because Europe can and will be the pacemaker for this technology in the future. Let's say the main driver and objective where we are working in BDVA inside. How we can do this? We have in BDVA a network about research institute, industry, big, small one, iSpaces where we can test it, links to standardization bodies, but we cannot do this alone. And therefore, why we are setting up a collaboration with the colleagues from the AI communities, with Claire, Alice, EuroAI, with the colleagues from the robotics communities, with Euro Robotics, to set up jointly together this AI, data and robotics partnership. We can do it together, we have to do it together, and we'll be successful when we are doing this together.
We in CLARE believe that artificial intelligence, or AI, will fundamentally change the way we live and work. It is also likely to become crucial in addressing society's grand challenges such as climate, energy and mobility, food and natural resources, health and inclusive, secure societies. CLARE strongly supports the development of AI made in Europe, with a strong focus on responsible and trustworthy AI for the benefits of all citizens. It supports the Sustainable Development Goals and promotes two central goals: AI for good and AI for all. Following our establishment in June 2018, we have become one of the largest AI networks focused on research and innovation in the world. And now, we are proud to announce that CLARE is founding partners of Adra. Adra will become an important forum for European stakeholders for AI, data and robotics, a lens for focusing activities across these areas. With Adra and cooperation, CLARE believes that we could further push our vision to lead the shaping of AI, data and robotic technologies that carries European excellence and European values of trust, quality and human centricity. With the holistic nature of AI that requires a broad and transdisciplinary approach on multiple levels, we intend to be inclusive and open to dialogue across all sectors. Being part of Adra is crucial to shape the direction these sectors will take. Support us in achieving Adra's vision for Europe. The time to act is now.
The European Laboratory for Learning and Intelligence Systems represents machine learning at its most advanced stages in both research and industry.
I am Barbara Caputo, board member of ELIS, the European Lab on Learning and Intelligence Systems, and co-founder of the ELIS Society. The goal of ELIS is to build a distributed network across all of Europe of all excellent researchers in machine learning. The combination of excellent research in machine learning and strong ties with industry is a powerful magnet for attracting the young talents worldwide to Europe to build new artificial intelligence.
Hello, my name is Sepp Hochreiter. I am an ALICE board member. ALICE is built on 3 pillars. The first pillar is the ALICE Fellow Program. It's a research program which focuses on excellence. 50% of the research program leaders are ERC winners. The second pillar is the ALICE Pan-European PhD program to keep the best PhD students in Europe. The third pillar is the ALICE Network of Excellence units, located at leading existing institutions in AI. The next big AI impulse will for sure come from ALICE.
ALICE wants to join Adra because it wants to be part of scientific stimulation and proper regulation of AI without fear.
Together with our friends from AI, Data and Robotics, we formed this public-private partnership to ensure that this powerful technology benefits all of us, all of you, and all of Europe. Join us at Adra and let's create Europe's AI vision together.
Thank you for that. So that will give you an overview of 3 of the 5 founding members, and we'll come back to look at the others later. We're now going to go over and get some political keynotes. We're going to get some views on how the wider landscape around AI fits together and how we can help our political masters, our political colleagues to achieve their long-term goals: sustainable development, stronger economies, a safer and better Europe. Our first speaker will be the first speaker will be Leonora Gewessler, who will give us a short video presentation, I believe. As a Minister for Climate Action, Environment, Energy, Mobility, Innovation and Technology in Austria. So can we go over to our tape?
Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear representatives of Adra, thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to speak at the Adra launch event today. Unfortunately, I cannot be with you personally. I have been following the founding of Adra and its ambitious goals with great interest. And I am honestly particularly pleased about the broad participation from research to business partners. Currently, we are facing major challenges, from the ongoing pandemic to the climate crisis. All of them require rapid and united action. The same holds true for the fields of artificial intelligence, data and robotics. They need an interdisciplinary approach, and we must work together to bring Europe in a leading role in these areas and to strengthen Europe's sovereignty. For a sustainable future, innovative projects will be increasingly important to promote and advance a smart and climate-friendly way of doing business. It will be about developing innovative and sustainable technologies that drive digital transformation in different sectors and reduce overall energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions and enable or support adaptation to changing conditions. Digital and green must go hand in hand far more than they have in the past. The connecting of green and digital is not something far off in the future. There are many great use cases already, which we need to further expand. What is still missing are the approaches to fully use the potential that lies in these projects and key technologies, especially in the field of artificial intelligence. We have been using AI to calculate predictions about online shopping behavior for quite some time now, but not to model the energy consumption of cities, for example, or to give better information about biodiversity or endangered species in our forests. So why not use these powerful key technologies to fight the climate crisis? AI-based innovations can contribute to the energy transition through well-founded forecasts of energy demand and energy production, increase the efficiency of logistics, support the switch to sustainable mobility, reduce the use of pesticides in agriculture, or promote sustainable consumption patterns. This is precisely why I recently launched the first AI for Green funding program in Austria, which will explore the potential of these technologies for climate-relevant applications. In other words, climate-relevant functionalities of existing key technologies need to be explored deeper, better, and in a way that is climate, market, and society-friendly. This approach should help to align the 2 European flagship innovation themes, Green Deal and digital, towards a common goal. These 2 transformations need to become intertwined and form alliances. Green and digital can both be mutually reinforcing, drivers of innovation processes can go hand in hand much more than before. And this intertwining could become a good new sovereignty sector for Europe. If Europe is sovereign in climate technologies, able to produce all essential technologies itself, Europe can lead by example and realize its emission targets and achieve both climate and economic leadership. I'm convinced that Adra can make a significant contribution to using AI, data and robotics to resolutely confront the great environmental challenges of our time. All the best on this joint journey.
I think that's a fantastic challenge for us. And from an engineering point of view, doing things efficiently is, of course, what differentiates an engineer from just any old technologist. Can we make something well to price, to scope, to spec? And adding the green requirements in there is just part of what it means now to do engineering right. So we'll take that as a fundamental challenge for ourselves going forwards. Our next speaker is Pekka Ala-Pitala, the chair of the EU's high-level expert group on AI. And hopefully, Pekka, you'll be able to give us some view on how the high-level expert group sees industry research collaboration stimulating economic growth. Over to you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, dear all the members. Economists from Nobel Prize winner Robert Solow to Bengt Holmström and et al., they all say that fundamentally the economical growth stems from the capability to apply technologies.
A great application of technology right there.
This one. And the AI, data and robotics are the technologies which are the most prominent ones to be applied in order to generate the growth, the well-being, and the fundamental foundation for us to do a number of things like the green agenda and the transformations of our societies. However, when applying AI, we need to remember that that is always context specific. And that is an important context marker here. If we look at the world today and the competitiveness, we can unfortunately say that in business to consumer side, China and US are having a major lead to Europe. But business to business, consumer to government to citizens markets are markets where Europe has equal chance to find a way to successfully develop products and services. And when considering the competitiveness of Europe, the most relevant granularity level actually becomes then the level of ecosystem. And the key question for us is that how competitive the European ecosystems are and how we can make sure that the enablers to make those ecosystems as growth and competitive and transformative as possible, those enablers are in place. Key element in impacting our competitiveness at ecosystem level in Europe are firstly the level of research, development and innovation investment, where we are behind US and China. However, the money we have, we need to increase that one and use that very effectively. And therefore, the cooperation, the new PPP initiatives are in a very important role in making sure that we get the connection between researchers and enterprises. And by doing so, we find the best possible ways of applying the research findings and discoveries and have them funneled and channeled to the successful products and services, which are then benefiting all of us. The second element, the funding, the sufficient use of the funds, the effective use of the funds is a necessary but not sufficient element of having the competitive environment. At the end of the day, it's all about people, it's talent. And luckily in Europe, for example, the number of STEM PhD researchers is twice the number in the US. So therefore, we need to take good care of our talent. We need to nurture them. We need to find attractive and challenging opportunities for them to stay and flourish in Europe. And there again, the PPP as a vehicle to create both scientifically interesting yet a challenging, positively challenging elements from the real world in the applying side, they come so nicely together in that kind of a form of operation. The third element is infrastructure. So it's not enough that we have a good capabilities in the AI side, and there are a number of things we need to provide and need to develop further. We need to have also data availability in quality and in quantity, and then we, in addition to that, need a very effective digital infrastructure, which together with the data and AI is actually forming a holy triangle of socio-technical infrastructure, which is supporting this work. And then the fourth element is regulation. The goal, I think we all should set the goal and the objective for the regulators in Europe, be it EU, Commission, or be it the nation-based regulators, that we would have the wisest regulators on earth in Europe. Because very wise regulation can be enabled when the regulator knows what to regulate, when to regulate, and how to regulate. And luckily, we have a better regulation toolbox at the use of Commission, from the certifications to black letter law and everything in between, including sandbox elements, which we should use more in Europe. And therefore, the regulation can hopefully be fitted to the context. And in many cases, the context is ecosystem. And what I think is very, very welcome is that the Commission has applied and used the recommendation by the high-level expert group on AI, that the regulation should be based on the risk level. So high-risk-driven regulation, which is now being applied, is highly, highly appreciated. Using that definition wisely. In summary, Europe, we are masters of our destiny, of our fortune. So let's take the full responsibility of that. And when we work together, because it's only by working together, when we understand that we need to invest more in research, development and innovation, and our people and talent, and act with speed, we have carved out a work for us, which will then give the foundation for growth and the foundation for economic, for social well-being at the equal terms. With that, thank you for the opportunity to share some ideas.
Well, thank you for that, and hopefully you'll join us in a few minutes for a little panel discussion, because in particular I want to pick up on that idea of the wisest regulators. I think that's something that is a really interesting concept that resonated very strongly with me. Our next speaker will be Carlo Ressler, who's a member of the European Parliament and a Vice President of the AIDA Committee, who are exploring the impact of AI on the European community. Carlo, over to you.
Good morning from my side. Good morning from Strasbourg, and thank you really for the invitation. I think that it is really clear that modern technologies are deeply changing our lives, the way we work, the way we learn, shop, have fun, or inform ourselves. That this is really completely different than it was the case with previous generations, and that today's world is completely different to what it looked like only a few decades ago. The increasingly digital transformation of our societies introduces us to the fourth industrial revolution, which is definitely an age of new opportunities on which we should focus, but also of some new concerns. Digitalization brings us many advantages, but the possibilities for human rights violations are also greater than ever before. In this context, I think it's quite evident that it's not easy to be a legislator, since it is very difficult to put modern technologies in the legislative framework, technologies that demand a truly holistic approach. And here I really always emphasize, talking with the IT experts, for instance, that it is necessary to have their knowledge, to have their know-how, but also that it is not enough, so that we really have to be to have a comprehensive approach and to be multidisciplinary in our approach. Also, it is quite evident that the current rules are not sufficient to cope with all the challenges of the modern age, and that we need new legislative solutions. In essence, from my point of view, there are two basic settings that need to be taken into account when regulating. First of all, it is necessary to ensure that the new technology does not violate the rights of citizens and of consumers. And at the same time, the regulatory framework must not hamper Europe's business development potential and potential for innovation. New legislative files such as the AI Act, Digital Services Act, the Digital Markets Act will profoundly, definitely change the European way of perception in the fields of new technologies, but it will try to really answer many different challenges. Bearing this in mind, it is really crucial to maintain an open, constructive communication all of the time with all the stakeholders. And in that sense, the AIDA committee in the parliament is having a big responsibility in order to pave the way for the European digital transformation through different use cases in the field of AI, definitely in this area of one of the central technologies of this new digital era. It is also clear that our continent has been a global standard setter throughout the past. The best example is with the data protection, and we now must find a way to influence the global community with our unique approach through international partnerships and relevant forums worldwide. The AIDA committee had now recently one mission to Washington to try to discuss this kind of transatlantic cooperation in this field of AI. Obviously, the legal systems and legal traditions are very different, but I would say that the American partners are really interested in seeing what is happening at the European level, because they are quite aware that all these changes, that all these regulations will in the end influence the companies operating in the US as well. I think that it is also evident that Europe needs to accelerate significantly in order to reach the gap that do exist, unfortunately, in the field of digital innovation and markets, especially in comparison to the main global competitors. And when you look at the facts, I think that this is quite clear, because only 8 of the 200 most important digital companies in the world come from Europe, while China and America are investing significantly more in research and development on digital. As it is obvious that new digital technologies have a direct impact also on competitiveness and productivity, but also on national security, it is to expect that there is a global race that is going to be continued both in the development and in the application of new digital solutions. It is getting clear that the global players with the capacity to lead in the field of AI will be the world's leaders in general. And I think that this is something that really has to be taken into account. But to sum up and to try to conclude this first introductory part, we can definitely use modern technologies in an even smarter way to make the world a more pleasant place to live, to increase the living standards. I think that this is our unique European model as well, but also that we have to be aware of the fact that this is diametrically opposite to some other concepts and paradigms of digital transformation, and especially of AI. And in a time of rapid technological and social change, we all must really have the courage to move away from our everyday fragmented bubbles and try to think holistically and strategically about this issue, which is definitely one of the key issues of our societies, and especially if we want to fulfill our ambition to for this decade to be a really digital decade for Europe.
Oh, thank you very much for that. And if I could now just bring our two speakers to the stage. So thank you. We're just going to have a short panel discussion. We have 2 or 3 questions that have been thrown in by the audience. Maybe I will start with Marina and ask you, what do you think from an industrial point of view Europe needs to do to get in front of AI rather than kind of being behind the curve technologically?
I mean, there is a lot of things that could be done, but I mean, one of the main thing is, of course, the area of knowledge and making sure that these technologies are not only in the universities, but early work really with schools and universities so that we build up a knowledge base. And then you also have the knowledge base for people who are already in the industry today who needs to learn more. So this lifetime learning is an extremely important way of it. And then we need to make sure that all types of companies are involved, from the very small to the very big, and also try things out. And these hubs to try things out and experiment with things are really important, so that we live also in this cross-section between academia, science, industries, and that we work together, but not in all types of size of companies. So I would say those are the 2 things that I would move. And some of them can be short-term and other are more long-term, especially when they come to the knowledge build-up.
Thanks for that. And colleagues, do jump in if you think there's anything we've missed on there. But perhaps, Carlo, over to you. And very quickly, I've been asked frequently, like, how does this regulation of AI work? What do the various actors do? And in particular, what do you see as the role of Parliament in guiding and setting out the context for the regulation of the AI data and robotics space?
So now, after the Commission came with the initial proposal, it is up to the Parliament and to the Council, so to the Member States, to agree on the final text. It's been mentioned already here that the first Commission proposal is based on the risk assessment to fundamental rights, and in essence, what this means is the higher the risk, the stricter the regulatory requirements are going to be. I think that we can be honest and say that this arose also from the requests from the industry, who was obviously opposing clear sectorial bans, but this principle is trying to avoid this, and in my view is really a good starting point for this AI Act. The Parliament will obviously have an important role here in this negotiation, representing the European citizens, and the Council representing the Member States on the other hand. But it's also important to take into account also from the previous experiences that this is not something that will happen swiftly, but it will take time. It is in a way a pioneering endeavor exercise. As I mentioned earlier that we want to maintain that role of global standard setter, as we did with the GDPR, most notably. But now it is really important to work on the details, both here within the Parliament and also within the Commission, and basically focus on this principle. The higher the risk, the stricter the regulatory requirements.
Thanks for that. And yes, your point about GDPR is well taken. I found it very interesting to see how industry reacted, changed, and evolved through GDPR, and then it became something that actually European companies had a natural advantage with because they had to be compliant with it, and so those coming into Europe then had to level up to the standard that Europe was setting there on that piece of regulation. So I think that's a very important model for us going forward. Pekka, I've been asked a few times about industry research collaboration and how do we kind of build that model and strengthen industry research alliances to create economic growth. The high-level expert group obviously spans industry and research. Did you come to any conclusions about what needed to be done to really stimulate the meeting of minds between industry and research?
It's a very profound question, and had we simple solutions, those have been already implemented. And I think every nation also struggles how they create a successful and productive environment where this kind of a cooperation can take place. I think few elements will contribute to the environment of productive collaboration, and I think that everybody is of the same opinion that collaboration is fruitful and is needed. But what we need contribution by all parties, and we need a contribution which is a long term. So the predictability, the longevity is a crucial part for companies to put important R&D initiatives in new forms and functions, so that they can trust that this will last and there will be enough contribution from all the parties to make sure that these challenges and risks will then result in great outcomes and products. So therefore, the predictability on funding, predictability on the talent, predictability on regulation, all those elements will be crucial there. And therefore, there is no one trick pony which would create a very lucrative environment for that, but it's number of small things. But what I would say at the end of the day, it's all about people. So getting connection, reaching out, researchers reaching out and to the companies in an equal way reaching out, and whatever vehicles can facilitate and help and create a modus operandi where this meeting and matching can take place. That is crucial part of speeding up the innovation dissemination. And success breeds success. So even small pilots which are successful should be then used to demonstrate and exhibit how the success can be done, and then learning that in a larger scale, how those would be expanded to even broader sectors and broader projects. So I wish I had a silver bullet here. I don't, but let me. The intent, the people are sharing, people are aligned. I believe from the research side, from the enterprise side, that the collaboration is the only way how we can make sure that we are effectively applying those opportunities which are out there.
Thank you for that. I think that if I take a couple of points out from there, that would be building mutual trust and building long-term frameworks, so we could know what would happen in the longer term. And coming from a country that tends to change its funding goals from year to year to year, where essentially you can't build any long-term plans around the funding goals, I very much appreciate that point. And hopefully that's something within Adra we can build, that community of trust, build that longer-term vision and goals, and give people the framework to work together and build those people skills in the longer haul. We have a question from the audience, which I'm going to throw open to the panel, which is there any idea what made China so successful in innovations and in the ability of its population to quickly adapt to changes? So I don't know if anybody wants to pick up that particular hot potato.
I can offer one.
Please.
And it's not an explanation. It is probably just a statement. it was the last 5-year plan where China set a goal. One of the key goals of that 5-year plan was that China wants to be the #1 in innovation and #1 in patents. And I can't remember what was the year. Was it 2030, 35? But in actually in not that distant future. And their social system, once they have a plan, all the targets will be aligned. And when they are aligned, that working together towards those targets, which are measured, which have their KPIs, will generate results. And I come back to your summary, which I think was a very, very good and concise summary. It is a long term, and it's working together. So when you work 5 years, you have a goal for 5 years, and you put resources, the financial and then the human resources behind, and everybody is incentivized on that. It generates results.
Thank you.
I would definitely agree. I can maybe offer a few other points as well, but the first one is definitely this, that you really have a centralized plan system, but which is really enhanced with technology. But then secondly, you also have a small tweak with allowing innovation, piloting, testing at the level of the provinces. So you always have some kind of almost pilot projects, both in technological innovation, but also in social or economic innovation, so to say. And then you have the whole country following the most successful pilot projects. And then thirdly, I think that it should not be really a taboo topic to say that they do not have some of those limitations, restrictions that we have in Europe especially, but also to some extent in the US. When you ask people where they would like to live, I think that the answer is clear, and we want to respect and promote our European model. But at the same time, I think that we have to be honest, and we have to say that if we have all those requirements in terms of protection of data, personal data, for instance, if we have all those requirements with the purpose, obviously, for combating climate change, if you have democratic societies, all these are positive and are beneficial to Europe. But in the sense of this technological and sometimes even geopolitical race, this is to some extent also a limitation.
Oh, thank you for that. Hopefully you'll be pleased to hear that one of the things that the PPPs are all doing is building a framework of results of assessment of KPIs, so you'll be able to see what we're doing and how we're doing it. And we look forward to working with the European Parliament to put in place the best tools from elsewhere that we can put in while respecting European values, I think is the right way forwards there. So thank you to all of our speakers there. That's been really, really interesting and very insightful. I'm going to close this section of the discussion, and we're just going to have a couple of short videos to introduce us to two of the other founding partners, EURAI and EU Robotics. So let's roll the videos.
Good day, I'm Carla Sierra, the current president of EURAI, the European Association of Artificial Intelligence. This association started in 1982, is about to celebrate its 40th anniversary. EURAI has been responsible for organizing the most prestigious European conference on artificial intelligence, the ECAI conference. Also, EURAI organizes the prestigious Advanced Course on Artificial Intelligence since 1985 and is running successfully every odd numbered years. Also, we organize a fellow program, currently having more than 180 fellows that are extremely prestigious scientists. EURAI is delighted to support Adra as the meeting point between industry and academy, so that it can become a solid voice for artificial intelligence in Europe. Welcome, Adra, and I wish you a big success in the near future.
Hello, my name is Felix Heinz, and I'm the EURAI representative on the Adra board. Adra is an important organization for EURAI, and we also believe that EURAI has a lot to contribute to Adra. In order for Europe to be leading in innovation and deployment of AI data and robotics, research is a key component. And we in EURAI are very eager and very happy to help provide the research capabilities in order to make sure that Europe has a thriving and leading ecosystem for doing research, innovation, and deployment in the areas of AI, data, and robotics. We really look forward to working together. Thank you very much.
Good morning and welcome into this final panel. I'm Emanuela Girardi and I'm one of the directors of Adra. And today I have the pleasure of moderating the industrial panel. So in the first part of the event, we heard the presentation of the European Commission and Adra's president and the directors on what is Adra, what is the partnership, and which are the goals and the long-term visions and the challenges. And now we will discuss really on how we can develop this very challenging and ambitious plan. And I have the honor of doing this with very distinguished guests that I'm about to present. So let's start with, and I'm welcoming Dr. Noza Bojema. Welcome, Noza. Noza, she is the Global Digital Ethics and Responsible AI Director of Inca Group, the largest IKEA retailer with operations in 32 countries. Noza, she was Vice President of the European Commission High-Level Expert Group on Artificial Intelligence, where she led the development of the ethical guidelines for trustworthy AI. And she also coordinated the group on trustworthy AI principles and the OECD, where today, with the OECD network of experts in AI, she translates this principle into action. And she founded the interdisciplinary AI Institute, Data AI, and was the director of INRIA Saclay Research Center. And this, I think it's very interesting, she's a Knight of the French National Order of Merit. Welcome, Nuza, welcome with us. Then I will introduce hi, Daniel Sainz Domingo. Daniel is the Strategic Intelligence and Technology Transfer Director at the ITI, the l'Istituto Tecnologico de Informatica, and he is a member of the Board of Directors of BDVA and of Gaia-X. And Daniel is representing the Istituto Tecnologico de Informatica in several partnership and technology platforms, like I mentioned BDVA, Gaia-X, Nessie, Inside AI, OTI, X16G, Network Europe, and so on. And Daniel, he is the coordinator of the inter-platform group of Big Data and AI at Spanish level. He's the coordinator of Data Cycle App, the Data Innovation App, which is coordinating EU apps for data, and which is the European Federation of Big Data Innovation Apps. And last, he has actively contributed to the creation of Indromeda, the Alliance of Competence Centers in Technology Enablers in the Valencia region, which is the European DIH candidate. Welcome, Daniel, welcome with us. Please join us. Then we have Francesco Ferra. So Francesco is the CEO and co-founder of PAR Robotics, which is one of the leading service robotics companies worldwide with over 17 years of experience. Francesco is graduated in telecommunication engineer at the Polytechnic of Torino, so my city, so I'm very glad for this. And he has a master at Thyssen in Lille and executive MBA at the University of Barcelona. And in 2004, he co-founded PAR Robotics, and since then, he has been working in the development of the state-of-the-art robots, specially designed to solve client needs. Today, PAR Robotics is known for the humanoid robots, REM-C, Talos, Tiago, and Ari, and also for retail and manufacturing solutions, such as Tiago Base, Stockbot, and the Solid12 quadrupled platform. Welcome, Francesco, welcome with us. And last, we have the honor to have with us Christian Gutmann. Christian is currently Vice President and Global Head of Artificial Intelligence and Data at Tieto Every, which is a top 100 leading IT company with more than 24,000 employees. And he is an Associate Professor at the University of New South Wales in Australia and a researcher at Karolinska Institute in Sweden. And Christian, he also finds time to edit and author several books, 7 books, over 50 publications, and he owns 4 patents in the field of artificial intelligence. So welcome also, Christian, welcome with us. Okay, so with such a high-level guest, I will start right away with our panel. And I really want to start with Francesco. So Francesco, I know that you participated in the writing of the SRIDA, the Strategic Research, Innovation and Deployment Agenda. And so basically what I would like to ask you is, can you please tell us why is Adra's initiative so crucial for the development of a European technological leadership, which is basically one of the main goals of the agenda, and as we heard in the first part of the panel, one of the main goals of Adra. Please, Francesco.
Hello to everybody. I hope that you are listening me well. And yes, let me give you our point of view. So from European Commission some years ago, I'm also one of the board of directors of robotics. We had this needs to just having a bigger initiative that now is called Adra, that we are launching, in order to have together not only robotics, but also the big data and for sure the AI. Okay, so all these community are growing as an ecosystem, and we need to work together to be competitive on a global level. We have to face front also from Eastern Europe, from Asia, from America, and this is something that we are living day to day. So in Europe, we have a lot of variety of SME. We are very agile, most of the time very destructive from technology point of view, but also from business level. And we need this community in order to take front to the numerous challenges and also have the proper speed in order to take front to the competition, the very competitive environment. But the most important point is that, at least from this is our point of view, is that we have a lot of challenges nowadays that we don't have enough people to face front on that. For this reason, robotics, that is the embodiment of this association, has to provide and has to collaborate with all the new AI algorithms and with the big data in order to solve these kinds of challenges. So the most important point of this association is the collaborations. We have to collaborate together, and our vision is that if we also put all together, probably we are not able to solve all the real needs that nowadays we have in our life. And we have to try to use service robotics, but also the big data and AI for sure, in order to face front of these new challenges that we have. And I think that the Adra is the most positive things that we are doing, and I'm sure that we can do a lot of things together.
Thank you, Francesco. Thank you. Yeah, I think that collaboration and bringing communities together and people together, probably this is really one of the key for Adra, for the success of Adra. Okay, I will now move to Nuzza. Nuzza, so Adra's ambition is not only to have a scientific and economic and technological impact with our activities, but we also want to have a societal and environmental impact. So considering your role first at the European Commission and then at the OECD and your research and industrial experience, can you please tell us what can and should we do to promote a responsible and sustainable, on one side, development, and on the other side, use of technologies?
Yeah, thank you, Emanuela. Indeed, in fact, I believe what we need to develop is really the algorithmic accountability aspect to ensure, in fact, the
Nuzza, sorry for interrupting you. We have some audio issues. Can you?
Yeah, do you hear me?
We hear a noise.
Oh, okay. Let me.
Maybe can you remove your headset and we try without?
Do you hear me now?
Much better, thank you.
Okay, very nice. Good. Yeah, so with regards to responsible AI, I believe there are plenty of work streams that we need to develop. In fact, altogether, more specifically in the context of public-private partnership, because responsible AI is at the edge of, let's say, the research results, but also very needed at, industrial level for daily life. So to me, the algorithmic accountability is a key work stream, meaning accountability from the auditability perspective, meaning also robustness, reproducibility, repeatability, but also value by design. Value by design, new machine learning algorithm and models. And when I talk about value by design, meaning it could be fairness by design, it could be equity by design, but also sustainability by design, in fact. And we need, from this perspective, closer collaboration between academia and industry on this new generation of machine learning, which are value by design. And I would say that explainability is something that having this, trajectory between research and industry, I know that explainability is a long journey from the research perspective. But I would prefer to make more effort on interpretability, meaning that I don't need necessarily at each, it depends, of course, from the business case or the use case more generally, whether we need to go into the black box or we need only to have the understanding of the interpretability of the outcome, meaning testing. That's why auditability to me, it's very important. So a company, when the company deploy its digital services and products, need to be responsible on the outcome. So to me, it is more about auditability, robustness, ensuring, such technological, not values, but properties. But also sustainability should be in there through the value by design workstream. But also, and most of the time, we didn't really focus on a topic which I found very important, which is data lifecycle end-to-end traceability and accountability. Most of the time, in fact, there are plenty of data here and there. Not all of them are interoperable. Not all of them are accessible. Not all of them are reusable. And really, in fact, I'm talking about the fair data models here. So we need to ensure the data lifecycle end-to-end traceability and accountability. And this topic need a focus, special focus, for the public-private partnership, because there is a really a big value here in terms of outcome, in terms of impact, in terms of responsibility more generally, in fact. And also a third dimension to me is about developing transparency in digital solution services and products. Transparency in the sense to allow human-centric technology to happen in real, in fact, meaning producing the context for the user of the technology in the large sense, to have, informed decision-making context. And most of the time, we do not have this kind of thing. You have an outcome and there is no interaction, there is no feedback, there is no, we talk most of the time human as a center, but definitely we need to make it happen through more transparency. And that's why the responsible AI, to me, is not only about accountability aspects, harm, or law or compliance, but also transparency, meaning we need to have a use of data and technology to be done in a responsible, but also in a beneficial way, in fact, to the many people and to the planet. At least this is also our commitment at Inca Group, really to go in this direction, to develop all the necessary, services in this regard. So algorithmic accountability, data lifecycle, end-to-end traceability and accountability, and transparency, which is really important to make beneficial services.
Thank you, Nuzza, and thank you for reminding us that at the end we develop these services, these technologies for the end user. And so it's very important that this human-centric approach is really a concrete approach, and we create awareness on how to use in a responsible way these technologies. Thank you. So let's move to Christian. Christian, so you have such an intensive experience across Europe and beyond. What I would like to ask you is, what can Adra do to reinforce and accelerate a strong and global competitive position for Europe, which is one of the main goals for Adra?
Mm-hmm.
And the big question, of course.
Yes, indeed. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the invitation. And please let me say, I also identify very much as an entrepreneur. So I have my own businesses and I'm working quite closely with startups across the world. So I think that's, in fact, one of the most important parts of any innovative ecosystem. So, and with that said, maybe let me lay out like 3 ideas that I have observed as I was working and living in many places in the world. By the way, several citizenships also, so I sort of feel this connection to many different innovation ecosystems. Maybe the first one that I come across or that I would like to highlight is that on one hand, there is the idea of bringing together different entities as a collaboration, sort of as in the spirit of collaboration for Adra. But I think it is also very important to distinguish, to at some point distinguish between business and the science and the research, and to start decoupling it at some point, so that that the business can run its own course. I was just, when you look at the big companies today that are AI-driven companies by and large, many have taken quite a step out of the academic world in order to become entrepreneurially successful. So for Adra, it would be good to find that cut. An example is Google, Larry Page, 1998, when they published the paper on basically on the algorithm, but then they stepped out of the academic world as soon as they could, and they start building the this ecosystem and built Google, which we all use today and which has changed the world and which has created hundreds of billions of value for the company and as revenue. So decoupling it at a good point is, I think, an important issue. And that is one part. Another part is I'm reflecting a lot on learning from the other ecosystems. So it was mentioned several times, and I also saw the questions like, is China and how is China successful? How is the US successful? And as I have been traveling around and have been in these ecosystems and applied for funding and convinced investors myself, there are some very clear differences in these systems. And Mr. Holger Kessler mentioned it before too, that we do have quite a special system here in Europe where we try to bring a lot of different ideas and frameworks and values together, but it's also really challenging and it makes us really slow. So when you look, for example, at what makes the US successful in California and Silicon Valley, I think you have an approach and a focus on creating value, creating businesses very quickly. It's not necessarily that the risk assessment is a number one consideration. If anything, it's a risk opportunity assessment, which I think is very important to also highlight. The regulatory framework that was suggested is primarily focusing on risk and very little on opportunity. And I think it's fair to say that anything we would be doing, personally or as a business, there's always a risk associated with it. But one, I think, also has to balance it against the opportunities that we have. So environments which naturally may come with bigger risks, like healthcare, for example, may also come with enormous opportunities that might be outweighed by it. So that's that consideration. And then maybe a third one, as was mentioned before too, about the talent. I believe that yes, we need talent, and it should be a type of talent where Adra can help to create these risk-taking with a deep scientific training or deep understanding of the actual algorithms, of the AI methodologies, and so on. And those two together, actually, we have quite scarce resources in Europe, I believe, and I think that is a very important part. And if I may say, I'm an academic too, or at least I'm still active, but I would say, and it was pointed out by Pekka earlier also, we do have twice as many PhD students and researchers in the AI field in Europe. But that should also point, that this is maybe a good thing, but it also points to us that doesn't seem to be the problem in Europe. That's what I want to say. So I think we have a lot of academics and researchers, which is great, but I do think we need a different type of profile. And then the question is, what do we need and how do we build this out? And given the constraints that we have in Europe in terms of our setup of what we value as a society, it will be for Adra very important to find that path through it, because China has a certain way and they do succeed. They, as was pointed out also by Pekka, they have KPIs, and once a KPI is set for the country, everything changes. I met several representatives of different regions in China, and they are literally measured by the end of the year whether or not they have implemented 110, let's say, AI projects in their community, in healthcare systems, etc. If they do not achieve it, this has significant consequences. And we do not have these type of top-down approaches. And I'm not suggesting that we should do it like another country. We should learn from those countries, be analyzing precisely what they have been doing, and then not necessarily taking this into our system, because in many cases we can't. We have our own frame, but finding that path forward. And then maybe a last consideration. I have in both of these countries, I don't think the innovation and these big companies, Apple, Amazon, Tesla, Google, Facebook, or TikTok, Baidu, all these big, huge trillion-dollar companies, I believe that none of them have actually come from government initiatives per se. So I think we need to think about, if we want to do it in that way, that we create collaboration among different entities and also academic initiatives, and we need to find a very, very strong path forward in order to find that impact that we seek, so that we can also create companies that have that type of impact, that type of global societal impact.
Thank you, Christian. It's very interesting. I mean, we really need to boost and to push, the talent that we have in Europe from university, and to push this sort of entrepreneurial mindset, so to push them to create their own companies. So we need really, a stronger startup ecosystem in Europe, probably. So thank you. Let's move to Daniel. Daniel, considering your also extensive experience in developing and coordinating network, my next questions to you is, so we've seen that to successfully develop a European ecosystem of AI, data, and robotics, we need an integrated landscape with the legal framework, the regulation, based on European values and laws, policy standards. Then we need the enablers, such as skills, knowledge, data, and infrastructure. So considering your experience with all the network, can you please tell us, which do you think should be Adra's priorities in this starting phase, in this launch phase?
Okay, good morning. Thank you very much, Manuela. Thank you, Adra, for inviting me to share some thoughts in this important day for Adra. Yes, we are now totally involved in this process of assuring the digital sovereignty, the digital leadership, and the strategic autonomy in Europe, as it was said in the opening of the session. And this is a complex process that requires consensus and takes, in some cases, more time than expected. Then we need, and I think one of the important things that Adra can contribute is to accelerate the design of regulatory and standardization frameworks to avoid fragmentation in this process of digital sovereignty, and to reduce the gap between research and the market, and to work all as a whole. It was said a lot of time today. I have to say that we are on the good way, because we have some partnerships, and Adra is one of the most important partnership in this area. And we have different acts already agreed, and also initiatives like Gaia X, you mentioned in my presentation, which is creating this global consensus for data sovereignty in Europe, working together industry, research, and governments, which is one of the first movements in this sense, putting together these three sides. So we are on the good way. Another element we can have, or we have that can play a very good role in this, and Adra can take profit of them, are the DIHs, the Digital Innovation Hubs, both contributing in this phase of framework definition, but especially in the deployment phase. DIHs can establish and can reduce the gap between regulation and adoption, between research and industry, and then DIHs represent a very good asset for Europe, because they are close to the market, they are close to the SMEs, and can make the connection, bi-directional connection between the local needs and the global regulations at European level, especially working on technologies like artificial intelligence, high-performance computing, and cybersecurity. DIHs, and let me go a bit in detail about this, because I think it's important. DIHs provides 4 kinds of services that can accelerate the adoption of technologies. One is the test before invest service. Companies can go to a DIHs and access infrastructures, access knowledge, to test different implementation of standards, test if one solution is compliant with the regulations, test different business models, and then reduce the risk before going to the market. And this is aligning with the previous speech of Christian. Second, DIHs are providing also training for covering this gap between research and industry. Training in the technological training, and also market training, because the important point here is the transfer or the transfer of technology to companies. Third, they are connecting bubbles. DIHs are a very good bridge between communities, and then they can connect DIHs, they can connect regions, and they can put technology from other regions in a region in Europe. So this is an important thing, the creation of communities, and last but not least, the access to finance, both public and private finance, and especially the private investment to leverage the startups, as Christian said before, is an important thing for DIHs. Then coming back to Adra, I think Adra is putting together the excellence of AI communities and the industry-led communities like BDBA and EU Robotics. And the starting point for Adra is very good, because the history behind all the 5 strategic partners of Adra is very valuable. In my case, I'm a member of the board of directors of BDBA, and I know more about the BDBA, and maybe my suggestions to Adra would be very aligned with what BDBA is doing. But I think it is important that Adra can start implementing as soon as possible the strategic research and innovation agenda, that Adra can create channels between academia, research, and industry using assets like DIHs, I explained, to boost the deployment of technologies, and that can have lighthouse projects in order to show the impact of technologies in action. Adra should also be very active in standardization. It is an important thing to create European standards that can drive the European leadership in AI, data, and robotics. And finally, another important thing for Adra is creating community among all the PPP projects in order to work all together with a joint mission. And also spread the values and mission of Adra to all the community to get critical mass in this starting point.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. I mean, lots of suggestions and lots of priorities, of course. And I think that one of the key elements of Adra, one of the strengths of Adra, is that we have the support of our 5 funding associations with all their experience, and so this will really support us in developing the strategic agenda, innovation agenda. Okay, thank you. So I will now go back to Nuza. Nuza, you recently moved from research to industry, so basically from principle theory to practice to action. So which are the main recommendations that you would give to Adra in this launch phase?
Okay, I moved in 2019, so it's not that recent.
Even better.
But moved to Inca last May. In fact, what I found probably could be a recommendation is to reduce the gap between the timelines of research and industry. I mean, research community and industry, because some topics like I talked about explainability earlier. I mean, it is fundamentally a problem of 10-year research, but we cannot, in the industry, live with something, a result that will comes in 10 years. Definitely, it's not, it's not something that is doable in real life. So probably Adra partners need to work in a format like a minimum viable product. Something like that, to try to reach, results, because industry need to go into product and into solutions. And today some results in the research community are ready to be plugged into innovation, but some of them are not. Some of them are rather long journey. So the idea is really to try for a given, joint project, public-private, really need to reduce this gap of timeline and to try to find where is the MVP, in fact, to land on a common MVP. Otherwise, that could remain 2 parallel tracks, and it's not the purpose of a successful PPP. Really need to find, joint the topics of investigation, and it is really the cherry on the cake. not cherry in the cake, but it should be the cake to have results from this PPP collaboration, meaning that we really need to focus on reducing this gap.
Thank you. So we see that time, reducing the time, the speed, like also Christian and Daniel mentioned, is really very important because, like Carlo Ressel told us, we are in a sort of a race. I don't like really the word race, but we really need to speed up in this moment. So we have an urgency. So let's go back to Francesco. Francesco, robotics is a European SME. So if we take a more practical approach, what an SME is yours, needs from Adra and look for in Adra. And then I have a second question for you from the audience, and they're asking, is there a lot of competition on robots that help and support humans? So we are also answering the questions that are coming through Slido, so if you keep on posting them, we are with our talks, we are answering them as well. Thanks. Please,
okay. I will try to give my answer, okay? So SMEs, like I said before, are a fundamental part of this community, the Adra community, and we have to find a way to drive all of our effort in order to solve the numerous needs that society has today. So in our particular case, service robotics needs and the rest of the ecosystem, for example, we develop humanoids biped service robot for research, for social robotics, or for robots for retail, or for intralogistics. For example, for social robots, we need to make integration also to advanced vision system or to language processing capabilities or all the new interaction stuff that all around the world and university from academic side, they are developing. For retail solution, for example, we have inventory, we generate in-store data and gathering analytics that are very, very useful to have this big data solution. So this is important, very important. And another thing is from collaborative mobile robots, we need a lot of algorithms, and we have an enormous use cases demand in industry, research, and healthcare, and this will be connected to the question that I just had from the public, that there's a lot of competition. This is true, but we are not scared of the competition. We are scared because we are not face front, so we are not solving the solution in a proper way. So we have, at the moment, we have more demand than solution. So this is exactly what is happening, but not only in Europe, but all around the world. So for this reason, we need this ecosystem in order to collaborate all together, in order to provide solution, real solution. If you just go in industry, but also in healthcare system, so in hospital or wherever, you will see that there's not so many robots used. So we are speaking about collaborative robots, for example, and where are these kind of robots? In academics, in research, beautiful video that we can see all in the network, in social media, whatever, but we need this kind of solution in real environment and not only in industry. But there's a lot of needs also in healthcare and also in the research side. So what we have to do is to use this ecosystem in order to provide this kind of solution. And the thing is to connect all together, and this is exactly the scope of Adra, to fill the gap between academic and the real world. But above all, we strongly believe that we can give a lot to the community, especially in the most destructive and advanced part of robotics. So we have to reach the real world with this solution. And Adra is just starting, and all together, we need to make it successful.
Thank you, Francesco. Yes, we really need to start using them and interact with them on our daily life. Thank you. It's very interesting also because, you are now representing an SMEs, but you are also, you were first the founder of a startup. So I really appreciate your views. Okay, let's go back to Christian now. So Christian, you're also vice president of Tieto Every. So it's a large enterprise. So we've seen now the SMEs and startup point of view. Now I would like to see, the large enterprise point of view. How can Adra be useful and how can create value for a big company?
Yeah, absolutely. And somewhat related to the previous question, if I may add what Adra can do and can help us and others, it's really one thing that I want to highlight, and I think it's very important, is for Adra and for us all to create a competitive environment for entrepreneurs here. Like I don't know if that environment has to look like that in China or in Silicon Valley, But in both these places, the competition is rock hard. It's like very, very difficult to succeed in this environment. They are, I say this now slightly provocatively, but as I'm working with different startups, much fewer startups in Europe, I would say, would survive these environments that you have, that are created in Asia or in the Americas. So I think for Adra, it would be good. Yes, sure, building communities, building collaboration, but in a competitive spirit. So it needs to be done for a purpose, not to connect everyone under the sun, but because that can also slow you down a lot. If you just have a huge, 1,000 people, 1,000 members all discussing and agreeing on things, but instead also make these strategic alliances. So how can you create really fast moving components and businesses in this environment? And I wanted to quickly respond to a comment by Flemming Christensen. He mentioned, why all this talk about China? I just want to highlight, and this is also relevant for us as an enterprise, for our company and for similar companies, the reason why China, Asia, and the US, we talk about it, because when you look at the ecosystem, they are dominating every single space when it comes to digital, AI, robotics, semiconductor industry, and I could name you any company where they are dominating this market by far. To take semiconductor or microprocessors, Intel, NVIDIA, that's sort of the background technology. They have been growing significantly. Yes, we have companies of that sort in Europe, but they're magnitude smaller. The same in the space of Microsofts and IBMs. Yes, we have one company, but they are also magnitude smaller. And that's the same with all these types of companies. So also your Apple and Samsung, these are not European products, right? This is a Korean product and it's an American product. So that is why all the talk is about China and the US, and the investment and the preparedness in these spaces is very high. And going back to your question, for us as a company, well, I see it every day, right? It's not an easy transition. I wish it was, but to be very honest, as I'm speaking to our customers across Europe, it's a very hard environment to bring this forward. And I think it has a lot to do with things like, bringing out a really compelling value proposition. That's very important. Adra can certainly help. I'm just here, by the way, in the AI Sweden headquarters in Stockholm today, where there's a similar event. We talk a lot about value propositions, but also priority of thinking and a mindset and a culture that needs to be present in any organization that wants to become more data-driven, more AI-driven, which in practice means, at least one thing that it means is how can you think when you see a problem? How can you think algorithms, AI, data first? If that's the first thought as to how you would solve it, then you start realizing that you have, like for every employee in the company, then you start having an environment where you have made a cultural change in the organization. And that is certainly something that we would appreciate a lot at Tier to Every, and also the companies and partners and startups that I'm working with. So that's my...
Thank you, Christian. Thank you. And yes, I think that we really need this new mindset. So AI, data, and robotics first. So this would be the mantra for the next decade in Europe, for sure. Okay, I have a last question for Daniel. And actually, I would like to ask him something about the funding programs. So Daniel, you're involved in several European initiatives. And the European funding programs very well. So if you could change instantly one thing about the European funding programs and how they work, what would it be?
Okay, it's complex questions because there are not black and whites or clear failures in the EU funding programs. But my main concern always when talking about the funding programs is the effectiveness and the impact of the programs. I mean, on one side, there is a lot of time and waste in the proposal preparations with success rates of 5 to 10%. This means that 90% of the proposals that are very good proposals are not approved, and they cannot be used for another topics because the topics change the next time, and then all this effort is waste. On the other hand, maybe there are too many topics, covered with small projects, and those projects are also disconnected. So once the project finished, the work is discontinued and the impact is lost. Third, different projects covering the same thing or similar things. And then, especially when talking about coordination and support actions, can confuse the stakeholders around one area, like artificial intelligence and data and so on. So my main conclusion is that in the digital area, where the market evolves so quickly, we need to concentrate and also coordinate efforts. We need to increase the intensity of the projects and the effort in the projects, and reduce the time of the projects to achieve short-term impact and look for European leadership. I mean, from the work program definition to the end of the project, it can be 4 to 6 years. This is too many time for being the leaders in one area in digital technologies. So in this sense, the partnerships are a good starting point, and then Adra has a challenge to achieve this coordination of all the PPP projects, to feedback one with the others, and work all together to create real innovative technologies for the market.
Thank you, Daniel. I think that one of the key words that we heard today is really cooperation, coordination, networking, and of course we need to do it fast because we need to speed up, definitely. Okay, so unfortunately our time is over. So I really want to thank our guests for sharing with us their views on Adra and on the AI, data, and robotics partnership, and for making this discussion very interesting and I hope also very useful for our audience. So thank you again, Nuzza Bojuman, Francesco Ferro, Daniel Salz-Domingo, and Christian Goodman.
Thank you, Manuela.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Manuela. Bye-bye. Have a good robotics week.
Thank you. Okay, so we're now in the very last part of our event. So let's go first and see the slide questions that we asked during the event, and we can see the results of this. Okay, the first question was, where you are coming from, and we see that basically it's very impressive that the participation was for a broad number of European countries. So we see France, Netherlands, Switzerland, Spain, Germany, and all the other European countries. So you can really see that, there is a broad interest, from everywhere in Europe. And this is very important because we really need a strong cooperation also with national government at European level. Let's see the next one. Okay, this one was, your background. So if you were coming from academia, research, or innovation, or industry. And we see that basically there is a little bit of everything. So the main prominence is research and innovation, but we also have a strong presence of academia. And we also see that we have several companies from manufacturing, robotics, AI, and also several different business sectors. So we have health, we have public administration, and we have transport, agricultural, and so on. So very interesting, and this shows that really, Adra is horizontal, but it's also vertical. So we really have to put together all the different stakeholders coming from different areas and all the European countries. Let's see the last slide, the last question. Okay, so what is important for Adra? So I think that all these topics have been very well highlighted and discussed also in our last panel. So basically we see that it's important for funding projects, and this was also our last questions. Networking is a key point, and collaboration. Then we definitely need to push on standardization. And I think that there are really, lots of very, you can see that there are several recommendations, and I think that these are all included in our strategic and innovation agenda. So we really have a lot to do in Adra, and I think that we really have quite a challenging plan ahead of us. Thank you for the questions. Okay, so basically we've seen now this word cloud. So we see a visual representation of our event. And I think that today, I mean, we presented the goals that we want to achieve with Adra and with the AI, Data and Robotics Partnership. And we've seen that these goals are really ambitious, but we have a plan, like it was said by several of our speakers, and we have also a long-term vision. And we're really confident that with the support of our 5 founding organizations, and of course of the European Commission, and most of all, I mean, with our new members that hopefully, I mean, will join us today and in the next months. And I think that together, and this is probably the key word, that we have to do it together, we will build a strong European AI, data, and robotics ecosystem. And we will be delivering this European vision for human-centric and trustworthy use of AI, data, and robotics. So if you want to be a part of this very ambitious and challenging project, please register and become a member of Adra. And you can find all the information on our website. So thank you again for being with us, and see you soon in Adra.